States continue their rollouts of the COVID-19 vaccine as threats of new lockdowns loom. It's a new year, but the fight for freedom is the same as ever. Friends, gird your loins, pick up your sword, get ready for battle. It's time for Hold the Line.
The numbers are real, Chuck. You know, you're going to have some deviation plus or minus a bit, but the numbers are real. We have well over 300,000 deaths. We're averaging 2,000 to 3,000 deaths per day. All you need to do, Chuck, is go into the trenches, go into the hospitals, go into the intensive care units, and see what is happening. Those are real numbers, real people, and real deaths.
Well, Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. That was Dr. Anthony Fauci this weekend, doing the usual Fauci routine on TV and reacting to the continued high levels of COVID-19 deaths and hospitalizations. Fauci also warned that more lockdowns could be on the way if the numbers don't improve. Fauci's warning comes as state governments ramp up efforts to distribute vaccines. As of right now, the federal government has distributed over 15 million doses of the vaccine, but less than a third of those doses have actually been administered. We'll have more on the vaccine rollout a little later in the show today, but I want to tell you about something else. I spent some time in Florida over the break. I spent about a week down there in southern Florida, in Miami, and let me tell you, it is an experiment that is being run right now in this country between states with competent leadership and states that are either so politicized or just so buffoonish that they're making everything worse for their own people. You go out in Florida, and this was in Miami, which of course Miami-Dade, very Democrat area, but the state government, because of Ron DeSantis, who I think gets not nearly the credit, enough of the credit that he deserves in all of this, the state government has decided that places can stay open for business. It was a remarkable thing. Here I am seeing the news stories. I tried to spend some time away from it, but I had to focus in on it from time to time just to feel like I knew what was going on. You see the stories about California, and you see the stories about New York. And they were supposed to be places where they had figured all of this out, where they knew how to crush the virus. That's what they were telling us months ago. Remember that? And if you had any questions about their policies, they were just shouting in your face, we've already proven this. We know how to deal with COVID. That was the line in California and in New York. So what happened? What changed? Well, when you go down to Florida, you see a state of comparable size to New York and California, where you can still go and eat, not just at a restaurant outside, but inside too. You see a state where people are out in the streets, where when I wanted to go to a bookstore, guess what? I could actually walk into a bookstore and look around and pick out what I wanted so I could go read on the beach in peace. Whatever you needed, you could go and get. Yeah, there are precautions. There are people that are taking this very seriously. There's no question about that. A lot of places people wear masks, and in fact, there's even some mask wearing outside. There are requirements in restaurants to wear masks until you sit down, but there's also a greater degree of acceptance. You can just feel it all across Florida, all across the people down there, that they understand that there is no way to entirely avoid this virus, and that it's not right, it's not fair for a government to expect its people to cease living their lives because they say so. Florida's numbers aren't much worse than New York or California's, if at all, right now. And overall, over the course of the pandemic, Florida's much better than New York is. So why is it the case? Here you can see deaths by state. New York, 38,000. California, 26,000. Florida, 21,000. And then deaths per 100,000, you can see right there. New York and Florida are close. California is, in fact, even higher. This is over the last 7 days. But if you look at this overall, Florida has done better. So why don't states see this and say, hold on a second, it should be an enormous difference between a still open state and a lockdown state at this point. They should be able to point. Remember when Georgia was going to open up sooner last spring? There were pieces written in places like The Atlantic calling it an experiment in human sacrifice. That's what they said. Didn't care at all about death, didn't care at all about all the lives that would be lost because of that decision making. And that's how we were all bullied into this. If you weren't in favor of this, if you thought that maybe these policies were overly broad and weren't going to have much benefit, you didn't care about human life. Well, now we've actually seen what happens in states where you do everything that they tell you to do, where mask compliance is over 95, some even say over 97%, where social distancing and hand washing and all these different mitigation measures have become a kind of Orwellian reminder system everywhere you go, in an elevator, standing outside your home, walking into any building, just walking down the street, on buses, on cars, reminders about all these Fauci-ite rules. And you say, what exactly has this done for us at this point? Why can't we at least agree that, say, mask wearing outside is unnecessary? Why can't they give us that? Why can't there be an acceptance of the science which shows that children are at an entirely acceptable, almost zero risk from COVID in schools? Why can't they just come out and say this definitively? Why should any school still be closed? Oh, we all know why, because Democrats are beholden to the teachers' unions, and the teachers' unions want their employees, their adults, because it's never really about the kids, to get paychecks for staying home. They don't suffer. You see, we're not all in this together. We're not all suffering in the same ways. And many of the people in charge show you this through the hypocrisy they continuously engage in. You look at what happens in a place like Florida when there's a greater acceptance that people should be able to make their own decisions. And guess what? There's not only a comparison that you can make between Florida and some of these other large states, they're better off. It's working better in Florida to be open with some mitigation instead of panic and lockdowns. And they can't keep blaming this on Trump. They can try, I know they do, but it doesn't work. No intelligent person can believe that what's happening in states across the United States and what's happening in Europe, what's happening in South America with COVID is Donald Trump's fault. But that was what they said because they wanted to win an election with Joe Biden. Florida is like an advertisement for what can happen when your state is not run by people who are cowards and who don't care about what they're doing to the people in their own state as long as it benefits the political party, the Democrat Party. That's what they really care about. And you know, New York State is now considering a bill that would allow the governor to order the arrest of people deemed health hazards. We've already started to see this. They're locking people up in the Caribbean for breaking quarantine. I came into the airport last night at LaGuardia, had to fill out my quarantine paperwork. Of course, I'm going to stay home for a week and not see anyone, and they're going to call me and remind me and all this stuff. How is that working out for us? All these measures, what are they really going to say? It would be double the cases we've seen day in and day out for the last 60 days? Triple? How much worse could it really be? And how could anyone think that this is success, what they've put us all through? None of this is cost-free, friends. Just remember that. There are some states that are at least trying to strike a balance, and they're doing a better job. The media is lying to you about this, largely because they had to all get on one side of this as a means of attacking Trump and defeating him in the election. But now it should be about reopening. It should be about the science and the data. But no, there are so many people with big platforms, a lot of authority and a lot of power, who first and foremost want to be right. They can't handle looking foolish. This is about ego, because they really believed St. Fauci when he told us that wearing masks and social distancing would crush the virus. Anybody paying attention to reality could recognize that as a fantasy now. But yet they still listen to him. He's still on TV, and the lockdown left struts around as though they're somehow morally superior to the rest of us who are saying, maybe we could have an actual balance here of individual liberty and these lockdown measures, just as a starting point. And maybe we should do more to help the millions of Americans who are losing their livelihoods, as well as the countless Americans who are going through extreme depression, suicide, drug overdose. All of that. That should be a cost, and it's a cost that we've incurred, a cost that we're aware of, and it's a cost we've incurred for what reason? You think this has been effective, friends? Go down to Florida, spend a week, spend a day down there, and you'll see that something is possible that is better than what these Democrat-run states are doing. Speaking of states, all eyes are on Georgia as tomorrow's runoff elections are set to determine the balance of power in the U.S. Senate. We'll have more on the state of play in that state when we come back. Fellow patriots, MAGA CBD is a revolutionary American-made product that's safe for work, THC-free, and features patented NASA technology, making it the highest quality CBD oil on the market. Dedicated to providing the purest, most effective products on the market, MAGA CBD provides third-party testing results from industry-leading experts. MAGA CBD is 100% committed to customer satisfaction and product quality. Best of all, 10% of proceeds benefit veterans and first responders. Personally, MAGA CBD has helped me sleep through the night, something I used to struggle with a lot. You can really feel and taste the difference with their apple pie flavored oil. I mean, what CBD product on the market could be more American? MAGA, NASA, apple pie. It's America at its finest, my friends. For your CBD needs, look no further than MAGA CBD. Learn more and order today at magacbd.org and save 10% with promo code BUCK. That's magacbd.org. You'll save 10% off with promo code BUCK. President-elect Joe Biden and President Trump both heading to Georgia today to lead the last-minute push for the Peach State. The balance of power rests, of course, on the outcome here when we're looking at the Senate. So this all comes on the heels of a leaked Washington Post audio, well, rather, the Washington Post posted the audio of a phone call between President Trump and Georgia's Secretary of State concerning the Georgia vote count. Here to break it all down, Ryan Girdusky, author of They're Not Listening. Ryan, tell me good things about Georgia, or not. Just tell me the truth.
Well, so far in this election, a little over 3 million Georgians have already voted. Very heavily within the of the 6 Democrat congressional districts, 5 of them have some of the strongest voting numbers. One is the worst early voting numbers, which is in the Black Belt in southwest Georgia, rather. Republican congressional districts have been okay, not great. Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, the new congressman from northwest Georgia, is having some of the worst numbers, and she's in the most Republican area. So that's not good. But Republicans do vote on Election Day, not early in this election cycle. And so it's nothing to be completely panicked about. The good thing right now is that of the percentage of people who have voted in this election versus in the 2020 general election, the biggest drop-off comes from voters under the age of 30. It's a significant 15% drop-off. So there is a chance that the number of young voters who help flip the state from red to blue and give Joe Biden very, very high numbers will not be voting in this cycle.
Ryan, who's in a stronger position from what we can see right now, Loeffler or Perdue?
Perdue, absolutely. Perdue has got a name brand. He's been in Georgia politics for some time. He came out with strong numbers out of the first cycle. Loeffler was appointed by the position. She has a number of controversies in her past. She's had a number of very poor television interviews, and she's had some really not wonderful campaign commercials. On top of that, she's been pummeled quite a bit, and her responses have been lackluster at best. And she kind of is trying to do this thing where we really don't know what she believes on a lot of issues. She was just asked the other day, would she vote to overturn the NDAA? She was not in the Senate to vote on it. And she just said, I'm not answering that question. So it's problematic for people, for sure. But so I think Perdue has the better chance, despite all of his problems and the attack ads against him. The incumbency does help him substantially.
I know that you were down there and looking at what the GOP was up to. How has the state level effort and just let's just say, nationwide as well from the RNC side of things, how has their effort been to help these two candidates?
Well, the Republican candidates have raised a combined $125 million, which is nothing compared to the Democrat candidates who have raised about $240 million. The candidates have made up for that effort in a large part because the RNC and other outside groups, Karl Rove's group especially, have put $180 million in to the race to help those two boost their numbers. I think that so that's a benefit, and they've knocked, I believe, as I've talked to someone yesterday, they knocked 10 million doors. They have precinct captains inside every Democratic precinct as well to watch for the polls. So they're doing everything I think that they can do within the time frame that they've been given. The biggest problem right now is all the issues that they've conceded in as I've told you many times on this show, which is that from ballot drop boxes to all the other issues that they've had, and I think that the messaging from the super PACs is not the best. There was a commercial I was told that was aired that was warning about going back to the Obama economy, and they've been very light on the culture war issues, which I think they should have been much, much heavier on. You have them trying to change the name of the Braves. You have Democrats promising to end Christopher Columbus Day, and you have Joe Biden talking about changing the law not to make it a crime to knowingly transmit HIV to somebody else. That's something that we should talk about, and not going back to the Obama economy, which was now 5 years ago, and most people don't really recall, especially considering we're in a recession right now and COVID and all the rest of the issues that we're facing at this moment.
Ryan, have any of the ads against Warnock or Ossoff really hit home, you think, moved the needle in favor of their Republican opposition?
I think the Warnock ads recently have been making an impact, especially when it comes to assaulting his wife, the child molestation issue. But I mean, they should have made a much bigger point, I think, when he sat there and said that we need to apologize for the crime of white supremacy and white privilege. And I think that he should have gone much, much heavier on when he said that you can't be a Christian and serve in the American military. I think that they were afraid to really get in the mud in some ways. But look, if this all works, I think they're too dependent on the idea of this is stopping us from socialism, which is their main point. I think that's a very, very, very dumb campaign ploy. It didn't work against Joe Biden. It didn't work in many of the Senate races. And I don't think that, or many of the House races too, it didn't work in. And I don't think that it is something that really scares people the way that the consultant class really thinks it does.
Ryan, we had a leaked phone call between the Georgia Secretary of State Raffensperger and Donald Trump. We want to just play a little bit of this and get some of your reaction.
You have a big election coming up, and because of what you've done to the president, the people of Georgia know that this was a scam. And because of what you've done to the president, a lot of people aren't going out to vote. And a lot of Republicans are going to vote negative because they hate what you did to the president. Okay? They hate it.
What is the truth of let's put aside the election fraud issue for a second, but on people staying home on the right because they're so frustrated with either Raffensperger or just the outcome of the presidential election thus far, is that a real concern? Are we seeing that?
Yeah. It's a huge concern. Yeah, I talked to somebody who was a door knocking captain, and he told me that they get it a lot. They get a lot from people saying, that they're very, very, very frustrated. And look, the number of people who think that Georgia was stolen is very high. That doesn't mean that they're not going to go out and vote. Republicans do still feel that obligation to go out and vote. But there are a number who are sitting there and saying, why should I bother? Screw Mitch McConnell, deny him the Senate majority. There are those voices. How loud are they versus how loud on the internet? We don't really know. Luckily, a lot of the people who go out and vote all the time, constantly, feel the obligation that this is America, this is a democracy someone's fought for, and I have the right to go vote, and I should, exercise that right. What I've just heard recently is that leaked phone call came from Jordan Fuchs, allegedly, and I've mentioned her on your show. She is the deputy Secretary of State that I've been talking about for 2.5 months right now. She's the same one who sat there and wanted to hire Cardi B to do poll watching outreach to get poll watchers. And that that she has been the main person running the Secretary of State's office, even more so than Brad Raffensperger. So it's not surprising, but I want to just point that out because I've mentioned it to you on the show in the past.
Is there any hope in your mind? I mean, we've got this Georgia election tomorrow, which obviously is critical, but is there any hope about getting answers to any unanswered questions about the presidential election in Georgia?
Not until this current administration goes out. I think that Brad Raffensperger and Kemp and the good old boy system that many southern states have, unfortunately, many southern states elect the next guy who's been waiting, and it is a very much a pat on the back system, and unfortunately, it's very problematic in states that are no longer reliably red. like Georgia anymore. The good news for Republicans right now going to the Senate election is that Democrats have kind of eaten away at most of their reliable voters, and now they're going to go trying to push unreliable voters to go out. Republicans have a lot more reliable voters left to vote, and all that matters. I mean, Trump's going to the rally tonight. All that matters is they actually show up now and carry out the day, and it's extremely, extremely important.
Ryan Girdusky, good to see you, my friend. Thanks so much.
You too.
State governments are ramping up efforts to distribute and administer the COVID-19 vaccine, but some are already being accused of botching the rollout. We're going to take a deep dive into the numbers in tonight's Buck Brief. I want you to take me up on my recommendation to visit doneforyoubuck.com. You can learn more about my friends at Done For You Real Estate. If you haven't checked them out yet, let me make this easy for you. These guys have found a way to make real estate investing simple, and their system flat out works. It allows everyday, hardworking Americans to finally own investment real estate without all the risk and difficulty of doing it on your own. I can't possibly tell you in strong enough terms during this 60-second commercial how important it is that you check these guys out for yourself, but I'll try. If you visit doneforyoubuck.com, at the top of the page is a podcast interview I did with Done For You Real Estate, where you can hear my experience in detail with their company in my own words. Visit doneforyoubuck.com, listen to the podcast interview, and give my friends a chance to show you what they can do for you because they've already done it for me. I'm now going on purchasing my third investment property with Done For You Real Estate. Trust me, give them a shot. Now that President Trump delivered on his promise of a COVID vaccine by the end of the year, thanks to Operation Warp Speed, the next fight is upon us, actually distributing the vaccine to the American people. But seeing this fight is even harder than the actual development of the vaccine itself based on the early results. The rollout of the COVID vaccine has varied greatly from state to state across the country. New York, whose governor is often heralded by the media as a kind of COVID saint, not quite Fauci, but, not far away. New York is lagging, and Cuomo's policies regarding the vaccine seem to make very little sense. States like West Virginia and South Dakota, on the other hand, seem to be distributing the vaccine at an incredible pace. It's doubtful you'll hear about that, though, maybe because those governors are Republicans. So what is the takeaway from all this? Is the bad rollout Trump's fault? We know the left is going to say that. Are there issues with distribution globally? And are some bad actors purposely slow-rolling this vaccine because they don't want to see success while Trump is still in office? We're going to examine all of this on the Buck Brief. Governor Cuomo, among the very worst, in my opinion, in the entire country. He's not quite as bad as de Blasio is as a mayor, but he's pretty awful in his own way. The Cuomo COVID plan has New York at 1,400 per 100,000 vaccinated, this is 100,000 people, versus South Dakota, Governor Kristi Noem, at 3,042 per 100,000. Now, this alone, this is all based on, you see here, these vaccine prioritization phases. And in the first phase, you're trying to get it to long-term care facilities and healthcare workers. Why is this not working better? I don't want to ask the question, why is this so hard? Because there are complexities here. This is a vaccine that has to be kept at a very specific temperature, and you want to make sure you're distributing it in a way where you're not causing, because of tremendous amount of human contact and congestion, you're not causing further spread of the virus to try to stop the virus by getting people the vaccine. But what's with all the slowdowns? Why aren't they able to get this to people in a much speedier fashion? Now, the federal government is easy to blame, at least as far as the media is concerned, because they had projections, and some of those projections have not yet been met. But the states insisted. If you remember, Governor Cuomo even said that he was not willing necessarily to distribute the vaccine until his own state panel of medical experts looked at it. So they were willing to hold back the vaccine because they claimed, including Newsom and Cuomo and others, that they were the ones in charge of its distribution. And so that was the deal. That's what we were led to believe was happening. And now that it's not going fast enough in certain states, well, sure enough, there's some blame going around, and they want to point the finger at Trump. But that's not the reason that New York can't get more people vaccinated more quickly. That's not the reason that we have a lack of public information. Who even knows what's going on here? Every place you look, You're told where to put your feet, wash your hands, cover your mouth with a mask, all this stuff. But when are we going to find out about the vaccine process for those who are at risk? When are we going to find out how quickly they can get it, where they can get it? That information is very hard to come by, and that's completely unacceptable. Here's the governor. I know I'm talking about New York and California for a minute. Here's the governor of Colorado talking about his vaccination program. Play it.
We expect to have that done in about a month and a half. Hospitals, community health clinics. We say, look, here's the vaccine. You have 3 days on the clock, 72 hours. Use every dose for people aged 70 and up. And if they don't, we simply reassign it to another partner who can successfully get that into the arms of somebody that's 70 and up.
So innovation, speed, getting results, that should be the focus here. But Governor Cuomo, for example, on the other hand, is telling people that if you give a vaccine to somebody who's not prioritized, you're going to get fined up to $100,000 as a practitioner. Gee, that's great. Let's make this even more stressful and more complicated than it needs to be. What should happen to vaccines that will go bad? They have them in batches. The batches have to be cooled at a certain temperature. If you don't have the people in place to get them, isn't it better to vaccinate someone who's at some risk than vaccinate no one and let this stuff spoil? But, they've turned this into a social justice issue, too. They've decided that we have to get this to frontline workers in some cases. Frontline workers or healthcare workers. It's not the same thing. But sure enough, there's politics around this, just like there is everything. How are other countries doing? Maybe that's a more useful metric for this in some ways, just to give us a macro sense of vaccination. Well, in Israel, they've had over 1 million people vaccinated. That's more than 12% of the population in the first 2 weeks since they rolled it out. The EU has had a slower time with this. European Union has criticized the rollout. You got countries like the UK are putting in place even stronger restrictions. The European Union began its vaccination program in late December, and the jab received approval in the UK and the United States well before it was greenlit by European authorities. So yeah, Europe's having a tough time with this too. This is a reminder, folks. It's a reminder that government is slow, that government is inefficient, that government doesn't do things very well. If they can't distribute the vaccine in a timely enough fashion, maybe we should also rethink how well government mandates can stop the spread of the virus in the first place. I think we should probably line these things up and start to understand exactly how that's working. Total doses distributed, just to give you the full data on the vaccines here, total doses distributed 15,418,000. Total doses administered 4,563,000. So you're at about 29% according to the CDC. That number needs to be higher. We get past this thing when we get people to herd immunity, and vaccination is a critical step right now in getting us as quickly as possible to that herd immunity level. There's a lot riding on this. They got to get this right. A leaked phone call between the president and the Georgia Secretary of State has set off a media firestorm. We'll look at who said what and what it means with my good friend Jesse Kelly after the break. The leaked phone call between President Trump and Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger has been getting a lot of negative media attention over the past 24 hours. Shocker. Watch it.
It sounds like Donald Trump is talking like a mafia boss, and not a particularly smart mafia boss at that. This is the way that people in organized crime rings talk.
Well, certainly not surprised. I think anybody that's been in Trump and President Trump's orbit has heard calls like this and has heard that sort of pushiness and that level of intimidation. Obviously, there was lawlessness related to the Ukrainian president. This is rank lawlessness happening domestically, and so he needs to be impeached again.
It is unprecedented. It is the most consequential attack on American democracy in the history of our country. And I think your previous panelist was right. This is what mafia does.
Yeah. The president's senior advisor for the campaign, Jason Miller, hit back at the media and Washington Post, tweeting out, they published 4 minutes and 31 seconds. Where's the other 35 minutes? Georgia Secretary of State Raffensperger is a political hack who doesn't care about election integrity, nor does he care about telling the entire story. Release the full tape. Indeed. release that full tape. I mean, I got to tell you, this is just going to keep getting crazier and crazier for the left. That's right. They want another impeachment. They can't even wait a few weeks here. Here with the reaction to all this, our friend Jesse Kelly, host of I'm Right with Jesse Kelly, only on the First TV. Mr. Kelly, sir, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas, man. Look, I don't even know why we need the full tape, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm not trying to put you down, but the part they released, it's pretty clear what Trump was saying. Anybody without Trump derangement system can hear clearly in his voice. Well, I played the tape today on my radio show. You can hear clearly in his voice. He's saying he believes there was a lot more fraud than just the 11,000 they're down. And he's telling him, just find that many. That's all I need. I'm not asking you to find it all. It's not some crime. He said, go find the fraudulent votes. That's one. Two, Buck, correct me if I'm wrong here. I trust your opinion on a lot of things. You've helped me through this industry in a lot of ways. Is it not guy code to keep stuff to yourself? Is this like an old timey thing that I adhere to? A friend of mine could call me as soon as I get off the air and tell me he robbed a bank yesterday, and I would not tell anybody. I would not call the cops. I wouldn't tell my wife. I wouldn't tell another friend. Now I would tell him he's an idiot and he should go turn himself in, and that was wrong. But I wouldn't talk. That's what dudes do. Who goes and sends the tape to the Washington Post? What kind of men do we have in this country now?
You have to wonder, and look, I totally agree with you, and it's just a question of whether or not someone feels a baseline of honor. And I know the left would say, oh, but Trump doesn't matter. I don't care what Trump would do. We're talking about the person who's taping the phone call. Does that person have any honor or integrity in the process? I completely agree with you on that. And as for what's said here, yeah, I mean, look, Jason Miller, I know Jason, you know Jason, he's saying, well, can we hear the whole tape? But I agree with you. Trump really believes, I mean, I said on my show today on radio, I'll bet you guys whatever you want to bet out there, that Trump absolutely believes that he was cheated out of this election. And he's so angry about this because he feels like this is all the Americans who voted for him getting cheated out of the election too. And he's not taking this lying down. All that said, Jesse, what is it with the Republican Party seeming to want to go back to a place where Republicans who take down, who attack, who ambush other Republicans get a pat on the head from the Washington Post, and those are supposed to be our leaders?
Well, what Trump was to the Republican Party, Buck, was he was the proof of what they aren't. And nobody likes hanging around that, right? I don't know if you have. I've gone through periods of time in my life where I was drinking too much, not working out enough. You just don't have your life together. And you know who you don't want to be around? People who do have their life together. That's what you're going through. Republicans have a weakness problem. Donald Trump's not perfect. He's far from it. But they have a real fight back problem. They just want to lose politely and go along to get along and just don't write about me in Politico. That's what they want. Donald Trump comes along, tells everyone in the media to go screw themselves. And now all the weak Republicans look weak, where before they just look like normal Republicans. They want him gone. They want him forgotten. That way people like you and I and everybody who watches your show won't say, why don't you find your guts and fight back? That's what he is. He's a reminder of what they're not.
One of my biggest concerns right now, though, about this whole fight over whether we get the 10-day audit, which, look, if someone's asking me for the odds, I don't think it's going to happen, okay? You and I both know it's unlikely it's going to happen, and it's certainly not going to stop the certification from taking place once they don't get the audit to happen over the 10-day period. But there's also this issue of people that are being held up as at the forefront of this. I've spoken to some of them on this show, but very intelligent, serious people who have data that they can. Our mutual friend Sean Parnell is dropping a whole report tomorrow on Pennsylvania using Pennsylvania state data where it doesn't add up. There are more people voting than people who could have actually legally voted. I would like answers to this, but we have this Republican, or whatever you want to call them, this pro-Trump but not really element that comes in and is talking about, Hugo Chavez working with Putin and bringing Pol Pot back from the dead and assassinating Abraham Lincoln to stop the voting machines from counting, and it just muddies everything up and makes everyone look crazy.
Well, look, there's an old saying out there, and I don't know who said it, so I'm going to paraphrase and take credit, about every movement, no matter what, left or right, every single movement eventually becomes a scam. It becomes a big grift. And the whole election fraud thing's no different. I mean, look, feminism went that way, civil rights went that way, the Tea Party went that way, election fraud went that way. Anytime you have a bunch of people mad about something like election fraud, there are going to be people out there who look at that big group of people and say, well, how can I get some money, power, and notoriety from all that? And those people ruin the movement. They do it time and time again. They did it to this one too, because you're right. I mean, we can't even find hard data anymore because everybody in the media focuses on the two wingnuts who are talking about special forces raids and everything else. So now what sucks is we'll never get to the bottom of it, Buck. We're never going to get to the bottom of what actually happened ever. And that's a bitter pill to swallow.
My favorite is somebody who used to work in the CIA and still has friends who run very large parts of the CIA, getting told by people well, I saw, this thing from somebody who's one of these, we know the names are, right, Powell and Wood, and these, but I saw something about a CIA plot to steal the election from Trump. And I'm looking at them like, no, absolutely not. The CIA did involve themselves in, or rather the CIA director under the guise of, what's his name? I'm forgetting the guy. I hate these guys so much now, but the director. Brennan, thank you. Brennan and those deep state clowns did the whole Russia collusion thing, but they don't have some secret plan to steal the election. This was old school fraud, folks. I don't know how else to say this. There's not some, international conspiracy involving, space aliens as well to steal this election. But when we hear that, it makes it just impossible to get to the bottom of anything. And I'm trying to tell my audience, I don't know how you're trying to break this to your audience. I say we fight every step of the way, but also be prepared for the fact, folks, that we're heading for a Biden-Harris administration absent some bolt of lightning.
We are. No, the chances of Donald Trump staying for another 4 years are less than 1%. And I realize some people don't want to hear that. I don't want to say that. I'd much rather have 4 years of Trump's presidency, but that's the way it's gone now. And you're right. Look, my own theory about the fraud is that it was done the same way it's always been done, locally by these local people who run this precinct and run this county, and they simply expanded it more. That's
yeah, and they know that if they
states are so close,
and they know that if they get caught, which they won't, they'll just say that it was an accident, that stuff happens, yeah. And it'll be like getting caught writing off something on your taxes you shouldn't. Oh, come on, who doesn't? A little bit of this, a little bit of that. So there's no real risk for them. Jesse, you and I see this the same way, but we got quite a fight ahead of ourselves, my friends. Thank you as always for joining, giving your perspective, and get some rest.
Appreciate it, brother.
After the break, our roundup of liberal insanity from around the internet, the Buckshot, the first one of the new year. That's next. Black Rifle Coffee is a veteran-owned company that serves premium coffee to those who love America. Veteran CEO and founder Evan Hafer spent over 7 years on the ground overseas with the U.S. Special Forces and as a CIA contractor. Evan even modified his gun trucks during the invasion of Iraq to grind coffee wherever he was. Black Rifle Coffee offers a variety of roast profiles, all sourced from around the world through a rigorous process and roasted in the United States at Black Rifle's facilities in Tennessee and Utah. The team at Black Rifle Coffee is continually researching and experimenting with new roasting methods and coffee origins. The best way to enjoy Black Rifle Coffee is through the Coffee Club, a free subscription where your chosen coffee is roasted, packaged, and shipped free to your door on your schedule. In addition to the convenience, you receive special discounts and gain access to exclusive products, member-only content, partner discounts, and more. Get the freshest coffee in America without leaving the couch. Purchase at blackriflecoffee.com/buck. Use code BUCK at checkout for 20% off your purchase and 20% off your first Coffee Club order. Canadian law enforcement goes full-on authoritarian. Cosmo jumps on the healthy at any weight bandwagon, and Democrats kick off the new Congress with some blasphemy. Friends, it's time for the Buckshot. This should put you on edge. You should be concerned after seeing this, because if our very polite and friendly neighbors up north, will do this kind of thing, if they'll have law enforcement engaged in these kinds of practices, it's only a matter of time before it happens more frequently here, if it hasn't already happened, which I think it kind of has, depends on what state you're in. Remember when in Oregon they said you couldn't have more than 6 people and that it was a violation of law? This was right around Thanksgiving, that it was too risky. And then politicians, of course, all gather, do whatever they want. Gavin Newsom goes to French Laundry. Tons of this stuff going on, right? The Austin, Texas governor goes down to Mexico and tells everybody else back in his home city, stay where you are. It's too dangerous to go anywhere. Oh my. Well, in Canada, they take that whole you can't see your relatives or loved ones thing pretty seriously. Here's a video. We had to do a little bit of clever editing to take out some of the naughty words. Here's video of the police arresting 6 family members. They were in a house in Gatineau, Quebec. So it's a French-speaking part of Canada. A neighbor snitched on them. The cops went in. Here's what happened.
Il peut plus respirer, arrête! Arrête, il peut plus respirer! Okay, calm down.
Can we move? Okay, we're calm.
Yeah, thanks, Fauci. Now you've got, I know this was in Canada, but this is what the so-called expert class in public health has been doing to us. Now they've created so much anxiety and fear that some people would think this is normal. There you have police going into a private home and arresting people for the crime of gathering with loved ones, 6 people or more, in a private home. Yeah, this is happening, folks. This is the country that we're going to be living in unless we say enough. Now on to something less important, but troubling in its own way. Cosmopolitan, a magazine that I can assure you I have never read, and I can't imagine why anybody does, but they do. Cosmopolitan magazine has on its cover a number of women. I suppose they are considered plus-size models. But they're claiming that at this weight, which we can all, because of the visualization, understand is certainly what would qualify as, medically speaking, overweight and perhaps even obese, that this is healthy. Openly advocating now for being substantially overweight. Now look, we've been through this COVID year. A lot of people have gained weight. I'm not one to throw stones on this one. It's been a tough year. There's a lot of reasons why it's been out of people's control if they've had a tough one in terms of their weight this year, and I completely sympathize with that. But let's not live in a fantasy world either. You shouldn't be, as a magazine, as a media entity, espousing that overweight is in fact healthy. That's not good. I mean, this is not about criticizing, but I mean, come on. This is not being obese. Heart disease, diabetes, there's so many things that are real health problems that are tied to being overweight. It's in fact the #1 driver of healthcare costs and diseases that kill more people in this country still than anything else. Heart disease and diabetes. So that's something that I think we should all be very aware of. The left loves to do this. The body positivity movement. #science until it turns into body positivity or how many genders there are or whether a baby in the womb is alive. They have problems with those scientific questions. This one really was just wow. You know how they want to fight the patriarchy? The Democrats have a problem with the patriarchy. Well, Representative Emanuel Cleaver wants to make sure he's very inclusive and very pro-women and all that stuff. So he said this in Congress.
We ask it in the name of the monotheistic God, Brahma, and God known by many names, by many different faiths. A man and a woman.
Amen is a biblical term, a Hebrew word that means so be it or it is so. It has nothing to do with men, even though it sounds like men is in the word. But a woman, now creating a new term because that's what inclusiveness now means, parading ignorance and celebrating it on a national stage. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is up next. Shields high.